Communitech helps founders start, grow, and succeed. Our members raise 19% more capital, raise more rounds, hold more patents, and have an increased financial velocity. Communitech member companies scale faster than anywhere else in Canada. So if you're not a Communitech member yet, let's fix that. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's event. Thanks for joining our Ask Me Anything session with SADA, focus on what matters, leveraging cloud services for robust growth. I'm Erin Warner, Membership Specialist at Communitech. Before we get started, I have a few reminders for today's event. This session is being recorded so it can be shared as a resource for our founders to reference later. You can find all our past AMA recordings at communitech.ca. We have assembled a panel of experts for today's discussion. Please note if you're interested in following up after the session to discuss this topic further, we will be sending out their info in a follow-up email. You can also always connect with your Communitech FSM and they can connect you with our speakers. Please check out our newsletters for our list of upcoming AMA sessions. For the next one in February, we have a session creating a 24-hour salesman, optimize your website to sell, which is next week. And with that, now we get to the exciting stuff. So I am going to introduce today's panelists. We have Aaron, Bruno, and Terrence with us. Aaron is known for cloud-related memes and is always wearing purple. And true to that, I think he is wearing purple today, so he's staying on brand. He began his journey programming when he was 12 years old, developing his programming skills while working for the largest Minecraft server. Then with some friends from Princeton University, he co-founded a cloud, which eventually flopped. Since then, he found success elsewhere, from DevOps engineering at telecommunications company to creating data pipelines for a self-driving bus startup in China. Aaron now uses these learnings as a Google Cloud engineer to empower transformations at some of the most innovative startups in the world. Bruno is a tech professional, leader, and aficionado focused on building and growing customer relationships. He's been at Google Cloud for almost 4 years, working with early stage and high potential startups across Canada and the South Central United States, while also supporting 10 plus Google for Startups accelerators as a technical anchor mentor. And we also have an amazing moderator today with Terrence. Terrence is originally from Houston, but was raised in Toronto, where he still lives today. His journey to this bio and headshot was definitely a scenic one, to say the least. The short version is that he went from bartender to single father to tech sales professional to the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario, and finally where he is today at SADA. As an account executive on SADA's emerging business team, he is beyond excited to bring SADA's considerable expertise to any and all Communitech members looking to make the absolute most of Google's world-class innovation. So with that, I will invite all of our speakers and moderator up on the stage, and they can take it from there.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Hello, it's great to be here. So I'm Terrence. I'm the single dad that is now standing in front of you to introduce two amazing resources. We couldn't ask for two better guys to kind of speak to how to leverage Google Cloud specifically, but cloud in general, but Google Cloud specifically for robust growth. So I'm going to get out of the way. Just so you know who I am the main point of contact here at Communitech for SADA. So if you have any questions following up with that or following up after this event, please don't hesitate to reach out. But with that, I'll pass it over to Aaron Brock. Take it away, Aaron.
This presentation is about focusing on what makes you different. And I would like to start it off by asking you a question, which is, what do you think the most expensive part of a startup is? I would love to get some engagement if people want to put guesses down, but I will give you like 5 seconds to mull it over and think about it in your head before I tell you the answer. And that answer is people, salaries. Your engineering staff is likely the most expensive part of your startup, particularly if you're a tech startup, right? And so anything that you can do to try to save on developer time or engineering time can be instrumental to running a cost-effective business. So I want to have a little story. I want to tell you a little story that starts with this light bulb here. You might think that it represents an idea, but no, I'm taking it literally as a light bulb. And I want to talk about Humphrey Davy, this beautiful Chad-looking guy. You may have never heard of him. He invented something called the arc bulb about 72 years before this other person, which you may have heard of, Thomas Edison, developed the light bulb. Now, Humphrey Davy had almost exactly what we have today, in that it was electricity going through a enclosed capsule that was a vacuum to try to produce light. And so why don't we think of him as the person who invented the light bulb? Well, simply because it was enormously expensive and not feasible for everyone to use. Rather, Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb so much as he took it that last 5% to make it economically viable to the masses so that you can use it today. And we see this in inventions all the time. We see this in the light bulb. We also see this in the great example of the iPhone. When it came out, it was a huge big deal, but it wasn't the first handheld smart device to exist or internet connected device to exist. It just did it better and made it easily accessible. This comes down to something that I'm sure everyone has heard of, the 80-20 rule. 20% of your effort produces 80% of your results. And so if you can focus your time on this highest value effort, you can achieve way more results. So let's talk about technology. I'm an engineer. I work in the cloud all the time. And so, this is the bread and butter. But I want to talk about a time before the modern era. I want to talk what it would be like to build a web server to serve up a website back in the 90s. So before all of our fancy new technology existed, the way that you'd have to do this is you have to go and contract a data center. You'd have to either rent one out or co-locate with someone else who is renting one out. And for this, you'd have to deal with staffing. You'd have to deal with the physical security, actually having security guards, making sure no one who's not supposed to be there gets in and gets access to your data. You have to deal with your rent and your electrical costs. After this, you have to go and buy physical servers. You have to deal with hardware refreshes or component failures, specifically like, you buy 1,000 computers, not every part in every computer is going to work. That's something that you have to deal with and you have to maintain. You're going to have to deal with your operating system and the licensing and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. You're going to have to install your own database to, actually write your data to. You're going to have to manage the replication, all that kind of fun stuff. You're going to have to write your own backend. You're going to need to develop this probably from scratch. And you're going to need to write your own web server to actually respond to the HTTP requests. And all of this is going to sit behind a load balancer, which you're, again, going to have to either build yourself or license out. And this is an enormously difficult thing to do. Nowadays, it's not quite as hard, but a lot of these things still have to happen. There still needs to be a data center somewhere. And if you want to do redundancy, of course, you need to do all of this multiple times. So yeah, there you go. So you can see there are multiple data centers, and that can be just enormously cost prohibitive. And this is why we didn't really see that many, or at least not the volume that we have today of these kind of tech startups, just because the barrier to entry was so high. Now, I want to take an imaginary look at two companies, one of them being an e-commerce website and one of them being a social networking website. And I want to think about maybe the difference in their architecture. So both of these companies, they need a web front end to support their application. But despite that, I would argue that the only part that's different between these two companies is going to be their web server and their application logic and maybe their database. In fact, even if you scale into these, it's not even everything. It's really just the development of the web server and maybe your UI and UX for the web server and the development of the backend. Your deployment logic and your scaling could really be the same across these two totally different verticals. So how does Google Cloud enable this? Google has, being a startup from the 90s, has done all of this, and they've thought long and hard about what it actually takes to get your application, to customers as quickly as possible. And they kind of think about this on this scale, where on the one side we have, oh, hey, we just need them. We just need the servers, right? If you want to go and get a server, you can go to Google and say, hey, I want to rent out just a server, kind of like you're locating within their data centers. But on the other side, you have their kind of SaaS offerings, where rather than dealing with the operating costs of all of these different machines, the only thing that you need to think about is that last little bit, the usage of it and the access policies on the very top. And so Google has been kind of pioneering these. I've been talking about web servers a lot, but this kind of same methodology of only write the bit of code that's different from you and everyone else. That's true across the board, whether we're talking about websites or we're talking about data pipelines, we're talking about ingestion of ETL type tools. All of these, for the most part, unless your company is actively cutting edge and developing new hardware, and for that reason needs to physically touch it, it's likely that another company also has the same needs, and there's a service there that you can pay for it, and it'll all be managed for you, so you don't have to have these operational costs. So this is where the concept of serverless kind of comes in. I think is a really misfortunate name, in that there are still servers, but you just don't think about them. So on the left, we have hey, running your own data center, running your own on-premise servers, all that. We have the middle, which is, hey, someone else is running the data center, but we're still running the operating system and above. And then on the right, we have, hey, we're only thinking about the application and possibly the packages that go along with it. So when I think of Google's serverless offerings, I like to think of them all as an abstraction, right? Just because I'm not thinking about the physical server that my web server is running on doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means it's an abstraction that I don't have to think about. And Google has offerings all the way from, well, actually they don't have physical machines, but they have everything from virtual machines up to or just you give them the code and they deal with scaling and everything else beyond that. So I wanted to do just a quick demo to show how simple it can be just to deploy a function. I believe I need to stop streaming and then share a different tab. Let me present a tab, this one. Okay, here we go. So if you go to the Google Cloud Platform and you want to deploy a globally scalable application, Cloud Functions is one of the most managed ways of doing this. I can simply create a function. It's all, they walk you through most of this. And you have a few configuration options. I want to allow anyone to access this. And then there's some options around the runtime and what exactly we need in it. But for the most part, we can leave that all as the default. And then here, we can select which type of application we would like to make. I'm personally the most familiar with working with Python. So we're going to do that. And with one other click, we can deploy it. And this will take, I don't know, a minute or two to deploy. And then from there, we have a globally scalable application where we didn't even need to think about the servers that are running. And hopefully we'll also be able to jump in here and edit the code. So once this gets deployed, let me jump back and see if we have any fun Q&A maybe things whilst we're waiting for this deployment. Let's see. I don't know, Terrence, have you been looking at the chat or things along those lines?
No questions yet. Bruno did bring up a good point that you do bare metal workloads for workloads like Oracle. So yeah, if that's something that.
Wonderful. That's why Bruno's here. Okay.
This is way better than in the 90s, though. That much is 100% clear.
Yeah, wonderful. So here we have the function, and I am actually just going to put this into the chat. This is just a hello world, so it's pretty straightforward. And everyone could reach out and hit this web server, and you can hit it as hard as you like, and this will not go down. I mean, obviously we have like under 30 people here, so it probably wouldn't go down anyway. But if you wanted to, you could go and pull out your load balancer or your load testing software and hammer this as hard as you like, and it will all be managed for you. As a quick aside, we can actually see exactly what the code is. And if we wanted to push out a change, again, I'm only thinking about the code. I'm not thinking about anything lower than this. I think I have to edit it. Here we go. And if you guys are familiar with Python, this should look real simple or real familiar to you, I should say. So I'm just going to import random, and then instead of replying with hello world, I'm just going to reply with return random.choice. I'm coding live, so you know it's real. I prayed to the demo gods before this to hope everything works. We're going to put a few separate greetings in. So howdy, hey there, and greetings. And then I can deploy this new version. And then hopefully what we'll see is after that goes live, whenever you hit the web server, it'll give you one of those three randomly. Assuming I didn't, have a typo in there, which I honestly, you don't know with these type of things. I try my hardest. So, alrighty. Well, I will let that deploy in the background, and you guys can keep hitting that that address, and you'll notice when it changes. Let me jump back to the presentation. Stop sharing this tab and start sharing this tab. There you go. Alrighty. Wonderful. Okay, so now that we have gotten through all of that, hopefully what I have said has been useful to you, or you believe that there's some merit to it. I will talk a little bit about myself. So I started as a backend developer. My first job was at a Minecraft server. And then it was a lot of fun, don't worry. And then from there, I slowly transitioned into working as a DevOps engineer for a telco. This is one of the things that was mentioned in my bio, where I managed a Kubernetes cluster, and I got to see the deployments of many, many different applications. I briefly took a stint in China where I worked at that self-driving car company. It was amazing. That was the first time I interacted with the cloud, and it was Alibaba Cloud, which is fun. And then I came back and started working here at SADA. And so SADA is a Google partner. And what the heck is a Google partner, and why should you care about this, right? So Google is a fantastic company that makes really, really awesome technology. But sometimes you need experts who have worked with the technology very intimately to actually go and deliver this, rather than just, technology isn't good by itself. You need people along with it to help guide you. And so what SADA is, we're one of Google's premier partners. So if you are using Google Cloud and you need help with expertise or need questions answered, that is exactly the type of thing that SADA does. And we do this all at no cost to you, because Google likes to support us because we bring more business to Google. And while I'm talking about more business to Google, I want to introduce my good friend Bruno here. And he is a friend of mine who works at Google and would love to give you guys a little talk about how Google's supporting startups here in Canada.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Aaron. So really excited to be here, y'all. The timing for this is perfect, and we'll get to it here in a second. But quick intro, like everybody mentioned, I work for Google. I've been on the Google Cloud team for almost 4 years now. My first couple of years back in 2018, 2019, I was covering the Canadian market, specifically Eastern Canada and the Maritimes, and was lucky enough to be exposed to some of the more bleeding edge use cases around technology, thanks to the thriving ecosystem in Canada, Montreal, Halifax, right? Tons of engineering brainpower, tons of innovation, tons of focus coming out of Canada. So power to Canadian entrepreneurs. But yeah, born in Brazil, lived in Canada for 8 years. My dad had always dreamed of coming to the States. However, immigration can be really tough. And so we decided to hop an extra border, become Canadian, fell in love with the country, culture, everything, and eventually Compaq and HP merged, which is how I ended up down in Texas by Houston. But actually focused in or living in Austin, Texas now. In my core role at Google, I work with high potential later stage startups. So typically folks that have anything from 10 to 250 million in funding. But my passion is really enabling entrepreneurs, particularly early stage founders, and definitely first time founders as well, and their teams. And so through my time at Google, I've been exposed to a lot of the Google for Startups programs. And so today specifically, we'll be talking about what we're launching. And so to think about the startup program for cloud, right? This is something that you might think of when you look at the Azure program or the AWS program. It's essentially a way to get access to experts within Google, join our startup community, and then get credits to give you technical runway, right, to iterate, do R&D, deploy, test, all those wonderful things. Next slide, please. And so what's really cool about this year, which is a little bit different from what we've had historically, is that we've outlined programs for startups, regardless of where they are in their life cycle. And so if you're bootstrapping, you're still putting together an MVP or a POC, right? You don't have a ton of consumption, and you don't necessarily need, let's say, $100,000 worth of credits quite yet. You can enter the program without any VC funding, right? Without any sort of like hard requirements other than having, a live website and some basic things along those lines. And so this is a great way to get introduced into our community and start building and testing. The base program is what most people think of when they think about the Google Cloud for Startups program. This is typically targeted towards pre-seed, seed, and Series A folks. And this is the one where you get basically 1 free year of GCP up to $100,000. USD, which is nice for Canadian companies. What's really cool about this program too is that we also added a layer for year 2 where you can get a 20% flat rate discount for the year once you expire the first year. And what's really, really cool about the base program this year relative to last year is that pretty much anyone can qualify as long as you have some sort of, super pro angel, incubator, accelerator, VC, some sort of, funding to get you off the ground. Because last year was a little bit more challenging. You had to be like associated with a specific set of partners. Assuming you're, later stage and you've, already launched your solution to market and you're getting growth, right? And you need to launch global regions, things along these lines. The mid to late startup programs are also fantastic. We have one for folks who want to test out GCP, and we can throw funding. For example, right, I can give Aaron $50,000 to go do work for you, right? If you're looking at potentially migrating from Azure or AWS over to Google. And then, of course, right, once folks decide that they love us and they want to stick around for the long haul, we also have a program that allows for significant investment for high potential startups across similar things, right? Partner funding, learning funds, cloud credits, all those wonderful things. And for those last two on the right side, you need to talk to somebody like me. So Terrence and Aaron can loop in, or myself, right, can loop in a GCP account manager because those programs are a little bit more complex. Next slide, please. So go apply. Yeah, the page is live. The application form is live. Free runway, go test, particularly if you're doing anything with Kubernetes, like Aaron was mentioning, right? Like Kubernetes is built based on Google's internal global container orchestration system. If you're doing anything with data analytics, machine learning, I think something like 50% of AI papers that are published on an annual basis are done by Google engineers, right? And so you would be surprised how much innovation you can do with minimal effort on our platform, given that Google, like Aaron mentioned, tries to abstract away all the unnecessary complexity, right, and empower you to focus on what matters, which is your core business. Next slide,
that kind of
please.
stuff sounds like too complex, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help you with it. This is to have a deep understanding of these tools.
100%, 100%. So now we're going to touch on some of the cool success stories we had in the Canadian market. Talkative actually has a special place in my heart. They're a voice AI company focused on the veterinary space. That was hard to say. Based out of Halifax. The reason I started working with them is I flew out to Halifax to go activate Volta Labs, a program out there. And I started getting really close with Sean, and Sean and I started chatting. And he's like, man, Bruno, doctors and veterinarians are struggling because at the end of the day, they have to do hours of administrative work typing up their notes, right? And so doctors typically do two things. They'll either go to the appointment, spend the entire time clocking away at the computer, or they'll give their client the time of day and the care that they want, right? And then they'll have to go home after an 8-10 hour day and then go clickety-clack on the computer for another 2 to 3 hours, right? And so Talkative built a voice AI model in partnership with us. I connected them to the voice AI team in order to do specialized vocabularies, because as y'all can imagine, veterinary and medicinal vocabularies, right, are insane when you're looking at, root words tied to Latin and things like that. And so you need a highly specialized vocabulary. And They did extremely well, right? Sean said he couldn't be happier. The partnership was so meaningful. They actually participated in our Voice AI Accelerator program last year, which I mentored them for. And then after that, they actually hooked up with one of the investment partners that we had as part of that program, who funded their multi-million-dollar seed round, I want to say. Next slide, please. I also love Tanjiva. So Tanjiva is a company based out of Montreal, founded by Annie Sir. And her vision is she wants to digitize and modernize the textile industry, right? When we think about sustainability, when we think about sustainable sourcing, when we think about what fabrics can and should be used in different circumstances, right? And how are they sourced? Part of the challenge is that the vast majority of that industry lives on paper. And there isn't really a standard way to, let's say, catalog textiles and their thread counts and validate that the stuff that people write down on the paper actually meets the quality of the actual textile. And so Annie and her team are building a platform to, one, standardize textile data in order to build additional applications on top of it, but also a marketplace where folks in the textile business can go to buy and sell surplus textiles, or whatever stock they might have on a global market, right? Where historically it's been a very tight-knit, small industry where folks tend to work right within their geography and within their relationships. But yeah, Annie loves us. She had a fantastic experience in their accelerator. They also went through a Google Cloud Accelerator program specifically for Canada. And they also just closed a multi-million-dollar funding round, which should go public here in the next couple of weeks. Next slide, please. Axonify. So this is one of the portcos for y'all. Canadian startup out of Waterloo, built on AWS, made a strategic decision to move to GCP, and again, right, theme there, managed to land a funding round that was significant for their business. And so y'all can see a theme here, right? When you build on Google, you build for security, you build for scale, and you build for innovation, right? And if you go to an investor and you say that, I'm secure, I can scale, and I'm innovating, they'll have a really tough time coming up with excuses why they didn't invest in you. Next slide, please. And so this is very, very timely because we're actually opening up another Google Cloud Canada Accelerator program focused exclusively on startups within your ecosystem, similar to what talkative and Tanjiva went through from earlier, where it's a 10-week hands-on mentorship program. We partner you with a couple of co-pilots, one focused on the business side, one focused on the technical side. We'll put you through a curriculum focusing everything from sales, marketing, leadership, fundraising, tech, AI, ML, all these wonderful things. And at the end of the day, you get a demo a demo day where we share that out with the investor communities and try to pull in as many ecosystem partners as we can, so we can help y'all move along and make your dreams come true. Next slide, please.
All righty.
I think it's back to you, right, Aaron? Maybe Terrence?
Yes.
But yeah, thank you for the time, y'all.
Yeah, so we covered a lot. We talked a lot of different things. We talked about technologies. We've talked about business objectives and how Google helps you meet those. You've met myself as an engineer who's worked with Google quite a bit. You've met Bruno, who has worked with startups. We have combined wealth of knowledge. That is, I don't know, I think it's pretty good. And so this brings us to, hey, this is actually a Q&A session. So if there's anything that falls into the purview of things we've talked about, or things that you think myself or Bruno would be able to answer, we are happy to answer those sort of questions. I'm going to hand it over to Terrence to moderate this and pick the questions for us, so that we don't have to.
Perfect. Thank you, Aaron. And thank you, Bruno. Two great presentations. There are a couple questions. The first one's from Brad. And his question is, what are some of the benefits of using cloud services when learning a new language? And he added in parentheses, I do not need to scale right now, and availability is not a priority. So what are your thoughts on that, Aaron or Bruno?
When you say language, are you talking about programming language or human language?
That's a good question. I'm assuming programming, because he wrote that in perfect English.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know if you want to clarify. Yes, Brad just clarified programming, so
Okay.
I was
Okay.
right.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I mean,
Thank you,
I don't
Brad.
think there's necessarily a correlation with learning a new language. I think I'm always a proponent of picking the right language for the job. I will say that Google Cloud, for the most part, supports pretty much any language under the sun. So whatever you're most comfortable with and whatever makes the most sense for you, that's what I would suggest using and or learning. But there are tools to take this and go and deploy it to Google Cloud. I mean, like for me personally, someone who's very familiar with the cloud, I don't really feel like I understand a programming language until I have experienced deploying it. So I can actually take it from something running on my local machine to, hey, here's something that actually anyone can use and is publicly accessible, right? So I think as part of a language, it's good to learn how to deploy it. And that's where Google Cloud can help. As far as like learning the syntax and things along those lines, I don't know. There's lots of great resources out there. The internet's wonderful.
Yeah, hopefully that answered your question, Brad. Great question.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that, Aaron?
And to highlight Aaron's point, right? If, for example, you're learning Python and you want to get some real world experience with it, try stitching together a data pipeline, right, with Python on GCP. You don't actually have to, throw data in the pipeline necessarily, but what's valuable is going through the mechanics of stitching together infrastructure with Python, for example.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruno. So we have another question that was posted anonymously, and this is one of my favorite questions. Oh, it's gone. Oh, no, that's because the question was answered. I was like, whew, I didn't memorize it. What's the benefit of Google Cloud versus some of the other cloud giants or hyperscalers, as we like to call them internally? So why Google over AWS or Azure?
I don't even know where to start. There's just so many.
Well, okay, so I will say in my previous role,
you can go first, Aaron, and then I'll do the Google thing.
Yeah, okay, because I am not Google, so I can answer this a little bit more impartially. I have worked with multiple clouds. I have worked, like my previous role was as a DevOps consultant across, many different cloud providers. And for me, it's like a difference of what their goal is. I find, particularly working with AWS, that they have a huge amount of products, and it's like, oh, hey, we need to check all of the boxes, but what you kind of leads to the situation where it doesn't feel like a cohesive tool set, whereas like coming to Google, rather than that, like everything is consistent and will work across the board. And you can kind of see this in like the philosophy of Google supporting the open source community and blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, you want to take something from a different cloud provider and plop it here? It totally works. They try their hardest to avoid vendor lock-in and things along those lines. So the way that I usually pitch it is Google was made from like the top down, thinking about what the end goal is and kind of working your way back. And AWS is thinking of like, oh, hey, we've got a big pile of infrastructure. Let's, sell it out as much as we can. And then they've slowly been building up to get to these, higher level services. There you go. Now you can hear from Google on this.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of advantages, right, to going with Google around this, and there's a reason why we're the fastest growing cloud, and the competitors are starting to be afraid of us, and it's because fundamentally we're a very, 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 very different company, right? Google is a data center company. Google is a software company. Google is a data company. Full stop, right? Microsoft is a software company that kind of had to throw together data centers because they got into the cloud game kind of late, and they still haven't really figured out how to run data centers well. If you look at some of the reliability statistics, they have in some years 10 times more outages than either AWS or Google. In addition, right, you run into licensing issues. You're paying double for infrastructure and software that doesn't even run that well. It can be a little bit of a mess. On the other side of the house, right, Amazon fundamentally isn't a software company, right? They know how to build data centers, and they build data centers, pretty well, recent issues notwithstanding, because they had to build all this infrastructure for Amazon.com, right? And what would happen is whenever Black Friday would come along, they would build up this massive infrastructure to handle the peak load, and then the load would go back down, and they just have a bunch of boxes sitting around in their data center, right? And so they thought, hey, let's throw a platform layer on top of this, and let's let people use our boxes for money, right? Google, however, like Aaron mentioned, has a core competency in almost every aspect that is meaningful when it comes to building a hypercloud, right? A globally scaled cloud. So for one, security, we have one of the most mature security practices in the world. We found Spectre, we found Meltdown, right? Like all these major security flaws. Our teams are the ones who are doing the digging and the fixing for these. For example, we have security companies within Google Cloud that are building security products into the platform natively, as well as that can be layered on third-party clouds, Chronicle being a great example, right? To where you're getting first-party capabilities that literally nobody else has, right? Stepping down from security, global networking, global software-defined networking, right? If you want to spin up a data center in Europe, a data center in North America, a data center in Asia, you go into one console, you create one global software-defined network. You can spin up 3 regions, and then within a few minutes you can have servers communicating globally. If folks have experience, right, deploying global applications on other platforms, you're stitching together VPN tunnels sometimes. There is more peering capabilities, right, with AWS, for example, nowadays. But Google has a global proprietary network, right? And the pipes are built like 5 to 10 times bigger than the traditional pipes for the public internet. And so there's tons of gains there in networking. And the list goes on and on and on, right? And I'll leave y'all with innovation, right? HBase was based on a Google research paper for a product we offer on our cloud called Bigtable, right? TensorFlow, major public or open source project. Google sort of open source that project. Kubernetes, right? Again, our open source project, more than 40% of the commits done, or maybe a little bit less nowadays, but almost as much as 40% of all commits done to Kubernetes code is done by Google engineers. And so what you're betting on with us is you're betting on innovation, you're betting on security, you're betting on global scale. And if you're a startup, that's not those aren't bad arguments, right, for why you should choose us over some of the other more traditional players.
I will add one last 2 cents, which is it's easier to use. Like,
oh yeah, there's that too.
I mean, like, I just, I would love to see a timed run of who can spin up a VM faster in the different clouds. But like, what Bruno was talking about, in Google, you can see all of your regions at the same time. This is totally UI, but like in AWS, you have to switch to the different region view. And like, if you go to your VMs, it's not all of them, it's only all of them in that region. Anyway, is what it is. Alrighty, we spent enough time on that. Google's great. That's the takeaway. My totally unbiased opinion.
No, and I'm sure. No, that great answers both, and you gave me a few notes, Bruno. I love that. So thank you. I'll definitely be stealing some of that talk track. Now, as far as questions, we have another one for you guys from the audience. This is a good one for this space. What's your advice for someone just starting out where I have no tech experience? I'm a business founder, but I don't have a tech co-founder. How do I start navigating building out my tech? That's a great question. So good, it stumped you both.
Okay.
Well, there's a few routes, right? Do you want to take a stab first, Aaron? Because I think y'all can play well in this space too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what it really comes down to is I would think about what your business case is. Like when you're selling to a customer, are you selling technology? Because if you're selling some new technology, right, that needs to be built, I don't think there's any way around either hiring someone or learning whatever it is you need to learn. If instead of that, your business is, like your business is textile and you're building the technology just to support that, then it can make sense to focus on, the particular business objectives and then to outsource the development to somewhere else, or go with some of these really high level low code type platforms. So I mean, I think you really need to think about what makes your business different, and if that is the technology, you probably need to learn the technology, and if it's not the technology, then maybe you can outsource it. And by the way, SADA does do software development if that's a thing you're interested in.
I was hoping you'd throw that in there. I was like, okay, I'll say
yeah,
it.
I was
But
like,
you got
okay.
it, so that's good.
Yeah, and to add on a little bit, right, I think there's value as a business founder to understand, at least at a basic level, right, what cloud is and why it's important. When it comes to actually like building something, right, to Aaron's point, you can outsource it, right? either to a local software development firm or an overseas firm if cost right is a concern. And you can get away with a lot of like no code and low code applications like Aaron's mentioning, right? I think that's where a lot of these platforms are starting to go, is how do we enable business people to build the solutions they need without having to learn a programming language, right? Because that's prohibitive for business folks. It can take a year plus of heavy training to really get ramped up on that kind of stuff.
So I mean, if we
that being said, right, Aaron and team can, yeah.
I was going to real quick and say, if we come back and look at this, right, we're seeing as time progresses, we're having offerings that kind of slide up this dial. And like, I think it's almost definite in the future, we're going to slide even farther up where you don't even need to think about the code and you can just think about the UI of your application, things on those lines. That's kind of what we're seeing on the horizon at the moment. And again, as Google being the company that's constantly pushing this, I put my money on that's probably where this is going to come from. So there you go.
Yeah, and from a bootstrappy build perspective, right? All apps start with wireframes, and wireframes are just squares on a piece of paper, right? And so I've worked with some high school incubation programs, and right, whenever we're going through product iterations, first it's like paper wireframes, right? Then we might build like a slide deck wireframes. Then maybe we move to some sort of like demo / POC solution where it's not a real live application, right? It's just a series of templates, but it lets you kind of click through and give you sort of like the feel of what it's like to launch an app. And then once you have, right, in mind, like what it is that you want to build, that's what you give to a software development firm and say, go, right? And so if you haven't worked through, right, the first, let's say 2 to 3 steps there, I'm happy to chat about it, right? And it definitely gives you something meaningful to do while we think about, how to engineer a solution for you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So in short, the technology that Google is providing is moving in a direction to make it even easier for you. And there are people in place like SADA that can help. So please feel free to reach out. My email and information will be it's right there. Or at least that's yeah, that's me. There you go. So feel free to call me and we can talk more about that. We have another question. Hopefully that answered your question, Anonymous. But yeah, no tech experience isn't prohibitive anymore. We can definitely help. Now we have a question about Axonify. This is good. They ask another anonymous question. So did Axonify go hire a bunch of cloud engineers who knew how to work with GCP, or is there another approach for startups with fewer resources? So I know a little bit about this. I know for a fact that Axonify is also a SADA partner, and we threw our expertise in engineers at whatever problems or roadblocks that they were seeing, and it really helped increase their time to value because they didn't have to do that. And it also lowered their costs because they didn't have to deal with that. But I'll let Aaron or Bruno talk to their experience, probably Bruno, since he was a little closer to that, I think.
So not necessarily for Axonify, but a lot of founding teams for that use GCP might have like 1 or 2 technical folks, right? Because a lot of the things that Aaron was talking about, like abstraction, right, focusing on the tech part that matters, right, development specifically, for example, the platform enables your team to spend their time where it's the most valuable, right? As a data scientist, you can either, clean data or you can analyze data. Google has, for example, a service to tag your data for you, right? And so you can either have, pay somebody 200 grand a year to, take out the trash, or you can pay them to, build a rocket ship. And so, although it might seem a little bit daunting at first, because the platform can be so lightweight and easy to use and so focused on, managed services that are natively compatible and work really well together, your team spends a lot more time on things that matter. And so you can stretch your engineers' value and their time more, which is really wonderful. But yeah, if you ever need more help, right, Aaron and team, our go-to-market strategy is specifically to go with partners. And we encourage every startup to actually engage with a partner, SADA being a fantastic example. Because, one, getting started, right, is always a little bit tough if folks aren't super skilled, but also SADA and folks on my side as well, right, our startup success managers can share best practices, we can share architectures, we can share guidance, right? It's like, oh, hey, Bruno, I'm working with a startup last week, right? Hey, we want to build a proof of concept around some of the Google stuff. We're not sure what to do. Can you help? I was like, oh yeah, no problem. I threw together a deck. I threw together an architecture. We hopped on a call, walked them through it, and made it to where a lot of the unnecessary thinking, right, where you're just kind of like spinning in a circle, we can get rid of that too, so that we're focused. Okay, let's get to value. Let's get to architecture. Let's get to building. Because we're builders, right? Like fundamentally at Google, we like to build really cool stuff, and we like to change the world for the better, hopefully. So being able to empower y'all to do that through your companies, I mean, dream come true for me, right? It's awesome.
Same
I get
here.
to live vicariously through y'all as founders.
Yeah, and that spirit also goes through the partner ecosystem in SADA as well. And keep in mind, it costs you nothing to work with us. Google pays SADA effectively on the back end in their own way to provide all that expertise that we were talking about up front. We've been doing this for 15 years. So lots of best practices that we've learned in that time that we're more than happy to share. So you're not spinning your wheels like Bruno mentioned before with things that you might not fully, understand. Perfect. Those are great questions. Thank you very, very much. We do have about 5 minutes left. I have a question myself that I'd like to ask. Oh, Aaron popped up. Are we getting kicked off the stage? Is this the hook? No, we're good? Okay.
Yeah.
I have one question, and I feel like that this applies well here. It's how soon should we apply for the Google Startup Program? Is it an app idea with a POC? Is that good enough? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so if we go back to the slide with the different base programs, right? If you are still at like the POC/MVP stage, I would say start with the base program, right? Or start with the entry-level program. Don't call out any specific like investors or partners in the application form, because that'll get you right the up to 2K for you to start building and iterating, because you're not going to have a lot of usage right at that space. Or when you're in that stage. Whenever you see an inflection, right, whether it's customer acquisition, consumption, feature rollout, where you're going to see your spend start to hockey stick a little bit, that's where I would apply to the base program. And the base program is great too for anybody who already has infrastructure, right? And let's say they're running out of credits with AWS or Azure, and they want more runway with Google. The base program is a great fit for that too, because SADA and team can help you migrate over, assuming your team doesn't want to handle it, themselves. So if you're pre-seed, right? If you don't have any investor funding, if you're, a solo founder or maybe have a 2-3 person founding team, entry level is a great place to be and to start. However, if you do foresee meaningful consumption, right, or potential meaningful consumption, go for the base program, because that's where you get up to the 100K free credits. And remember, the base program is on a clock, right? It lasts a year for year one and a year for year two. And so you want to make sure that whenever you activate it, you're actually at a point where you're going to be consuming. Because I've seen a lot of founders get frustrated, right? It's like, hey, Google, we got into the program, we only used, $5,000 worth of credits. You promised us 100,000. What happened? It's like, well, there were some stipulations around the credit consumption, right? And, given circumstances, we can do extensions and things like that. But just be mindful, right, of activating the base program, because it does start the clock.
Awesome. Thank you. Perfect. So, Aaron, I know I just saw the warning come up. We're 2 minutes away from closing time. So thank you very much for the platform. Thank you, everybody who showed up. I'll pass it to Aaron. I will say one thing. So if there's anyone here who wants to hear a little bit more about how SADA has helped in multi-cloud environments as well, we're doing a tech talk on February 23rd. I'd love to see you guys there if you're interested, or pass it around to whomever. And again, don't hesitate to reach out. There's my contact information. I'm happy to help anyone at any point along that journey that we described today. Thank you again.
Amazing. Thank you, Terrence. And SADA is one of our Pro Squad members, so you can always show up to our Pro Squad office hours to have a chat with them. And we'll, again, be sending out all this information in the follow-up email. So I just wanted to thank our audience and our amazing panelists. So Terrence, Aaron, and Bruno, you're all amazing, and I loved hearing you guys chat. So yeah, we will close out the event today before we get kicked off. And I hope to see you all next week at our next AMA. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
So long.